Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I am grateful you're coming back here off our last episode about building consensus in ever changing times. Here I am at the end of July 2024, and we're in ever changing times, ever changing times. Um, and so it caused me to think about a challenge that we all face. I like the saying that we are leaky vessels, either individually and collectively as an organization. We have leaks. Uh, and so I'm going to kick off this podcast with a little story and really get at this challenge or problem that we're facing in ourselves and the organizations that we find ourselves working in, collaborating with, is that we're all leaky at some place. Um, and this is our character potentially, it's our effectiveness. We're going to get into some of the specific areas today on the podcast. So I'm going to start off with, like I said, a story where I actually just went camping with my son the last weekend. We live here in the San Bernardino Mountains, and we haven't done backpack camping in about a year. It's a great opportunity to get out into nature, to push yourself physically, make sure you've planned appropriately for the camping trip. We went with another family. And, you know, one of the things that's vital on a camping trip like this in particular is that you have enough water, right? So, looking at that, making sure you're prepared. So, one of the things that we carry with us is a way of filtering the water, right? And if you have a leak in your water, that's a big problem because that's vital again to you making it all the distance, the miles you need to travel, the elevations that you're going in, staying hydrated. And so I thought that this would be a great analogy, if you will, for areas in our life where we may not be paying as close to attention about where are the leaks, where are the areas that we're quote deflating in. We're not fully present. We're not fully aware of how we're leading ourselves and how we're leading our teams. That's what we're all about here on the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast, is empowering you to be that healthiest leader so that you are leading yourself well and your teams. But it starts with analyzing ourselves. And these could be different areas. You've heard me talk about the core four, or this understanding of our these domains of our, not only our business, but our physical body, our spiritual walk, what I call our being, our relationships, also called balance. And where are we leaking in one or more of those domains, and what do we need to do about it? So I'm going to get to a solution, one here on the podcast today. But before I get there, I just want to go through this idea and understanding of the fact that we are leaky. Uh, and so I know it may sound a little funny, but when you hear that leakiness, thinking about where that is, I like mountain biking, right? And you always have to check your tires. Are they the right firmness, right? You want to have it not too soft, not too hard. You want to have it just the right. But if it's leaking, you're not going to have the same effectiveness you would riding in the trail. You wouldn't have the most greatest confidence in making the turns and making the decisions because there's a lack of the desired outcome, if you will, for how you want the situation to be. And so we may consciously or subconsciously have leakiness in our lives. I talked with a friend and colleague today about that, where he called me and he's like, "Why am I not getting to this thing? Why am I not taking care of this issue?" We've talked about that in previous episodes about balancing the urgent and the important. And there's probably a reason, because maybe your leakiness is your physical energy. We talked a little bit about that also in mastering shifts, energy shifts, in a recent podcast episode. You can go back and listen to. But if we don't recognize that there's a leak, there's a drift, if you will, that we are getting away from certain areas of our life, we can get in trouble. And And the podcast here, I'm going to walk you through one tool that I use with clients and helping them understand that. Um, but again, this is a challenge for me because I looked at some things just even recently, and these may not be huge things. Initially, they're small, right? A leak that we had one time, where we're living in Orange County. We had a very, very pinhole leak in our pipe, and it actually didn't directly affect us because we had a condo that we were living at. It was a shared wall. Well, this pinhole leak was actually pointing to my neighbor, and it was saturating their wall and their floor, and eventually it would have affected us, but it takes a long time. And so sometimes I don't even remember how long this leak was going for till then the reality of, oh wow, this is a problem. I mean, how many of you have had a leaky sprinkler or something with water, and you get a water bill and you're like, holy moly, I didn't even realize that it cost me this much, right? You didn't even see it, you didn't detect it until you actually saw it on somebody else's measurement, right? Somebody else was measuring it and they told you, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize the cost." That's what a good coach and consultant is going to do. Is they're going to help you understand what's the cost of continually allowing this leak in my organization. And those, here on the Intelligent Leadership podcast, we're all about individuals, people. You know, yes, we can have AI. Yes, we can have a lot of technology, but what it comes down to is we do need people ultimately in our businesses to make them run effectively. They also contribute to how they don't run effectively either. So you may have somebody that's quote unquote leaking in your system, and you need to address that. And how do we address that? And so I'm going to walk you through that today on this episode of the podcast. But just recognize this concept and look at your life and how we're gonna do that. I'm gonna walk you through an assessment, an audit, if you will, as to a way to address that. Now, I'm certified in many different ways, and so this is a way. And as you've heard me on the podcast before, I'm really not a stickler on the tool itself, but I want to get you the result. So as you listen to this podcast and as you apply these things to your life, that's ultimately want to see you have success on. If the tool doesn't serve you, then move to the one that works better for you. So as you listen to this is some of the things I explore with you in Steward Your Business, where I work with business owners and their teams and individuals, and we apply and I pull from my vast knowledge of over 20 plus years and investing tens of thousands of dollars in myself for you to figure out what's the best tool and resource for you. So this is where we can come in to this tool that I'm going to introduce you today called the GiANT Leadership Audit, or GLA for short. Um, One way we do this is we look at what I call a flywheel. If you're not familiar with a flywheel, think about a bike, something that is moving, right? The gears, right? It's moving the chain. And if one of those is off or more, right, you're going to have trouble. And if you think about like a bike gear, right, if one of those is broken, um, it's going to have difficulty shifting. And so what we want to do is help you be able to be shift well between the different challenges and take advantage of the opportunities you have before you. And so as we talked about identifying this concept of leaks, we have leaks of, like I said, energy, time, focus, resources, um, trust, right? That's huge in organizational integrity. Sometimes it's hard to put your finger on exactly one of those things or more, and that's why you hire a coach. That's why you hire a consultant that can help identify that, can work with you to expedite that process so that you're not spending months, potentially even years, in a chronic situation where you're continually leaking your and ultimately that means money, that means profits, that means turnover of individuals. And so we want to stop the leaks. Um, and we want to give you certainty, power, clarity, and able to make confident decisions for your company, for your individuals. And so we're going to jump into that today. And there's much more we can do. And this, when I go one on one with you, and so as you hear this podcast, I'll definitely go on a deeper dive with you. When I do a leadership audit, if you will, this is something that we can do in a discovery call initially, and we can go in a deeper dive. And I customize programs and processes for you to serve your needs of where you're at specifically. So there is not always a one size fits all. But here today, I'm going to give you a framework that you can follow to start to understand and identify the leaks in yourself and in your organization. Um, and so, one way we look at this is communication. Now, everybody knows about communication. Communication is key, but how do we um, quite appropriately identify the issues and wrap our arms around it, right? So, again, we may be leaking because we have drama, maybe unnecessary conflict. Um, there's inefficiencies. There's people dropping the ball, and obviously, when we have poor communication on leadership, our organizational effectiveness is going to decline. We're going to have difficulty meeting our revenue targets, right? Our profit goals, because we're having challenges in communicating our goals, right? We're communicating and collaborating with each other. There may be mistrust. There may be issues of um, frustration. And one of the things I've talked about in previous episodes here is we talk about the five voices, kind of appreciation and understanding that. The five voices is a great overlay to this leadership audit. But when we can improve our performance, and let's just talk about this. I worked with a firm that had civil and structural engineering, both engineering department heads, both very competent, but they were siloed and they didn't collaborate with each other. And so here's an example of where you could go further together than you can individually. Uh, doesn't mean every project is going to have both civil and structural engineering, but there's often chance that they can support one another either on a current project or possibly a future project based on the client. But if you're not intentionally communicating with each other and you're just like, well, I'm going to do my thing and then you do your thing, that defeats the purpose of the organization of having both of these departments. You might as well be their own individual companies. How, but even to that point, you're looking within and without, with outside of yourself too. Are you developing the relationships with key teaming partners or potentially regulators? I was talking to a client yesterday. They worked with the city, and the city was giving them misdirection based on their own municipal code. And so we said, well, we got to get better at this, understanding um, the number one, the code, and being able to respond back to this particular city as to their direction. So how are we communicating internally and externally? This is part of the audit that we look at. And there's a deeper dive that we can go here, but in the spirit of time that we have here on the podcast, because I can't solve it all here in the podcast. You've heard me talk about this before, but it can start to open your eyes to what is possible. And that's my point here in the podcast is I want you to be aware, looking out for these things. If you're completely unaware, then yeah, things are just going to be happening to you. I want you to be that intelligent human leader, being prepared, be on the lookout, and then say, hey, you know what? There's a problem here. I don't know how to solve the problem necessarily, but I know somebody who does. David Carr, Steward Your Business, is one of those people that I could go and ask and get some perspective on. But number one, you have to even be able to identify, is this an issue? Is this where we're leaking, right? Communication. Number two is relationships or your balance, right? This These are all related. So remember, when I say a flywheel, think about all these are components. One is touching the other. So this could be gossip. It could be mistrust. It could be people to be kind of a power trip, if you will, right? Or it could be toxic sometimes, where you have certain people. Now, some of them are very obvious, and then some of them are harder to identify. I would say it's easier to identify, for example, where people are super aggressive. That's usually easier. Passive aggressive, though, is more challenging to identify at times. And so, how are people feeling? Now, you can't discern somebody's intent, but you can discern how it makes you feel. What is your feeling coming out of this? How's the relationship? How are you feeling in interaction with your team internally and externally? I've been in situations where they've been very both a spectrum of passive aggressive to aggressive. Again, aggressive's harder to hide because it's just not as socially acceptable, honestly, in today's age, although some people are doing that. But passive aggressive, I believe, is more common because it can be passed off as, uh, you know, being somewhat helpful, but not really. Or you might have heard the term gaslighting. Um, there is ways where we need to address these issues in a healthy way. And so when we can go through this leadership audit, we can start to look about how we can turn this around. How can we build trust? How can we create a positive work environment where we start to eliminate those behaviors, or in some cases, those people need to be removed from the organization. And you can do that in certain ways, which we go through in creating the culture and the environment that you desire as the business owner or leader for your team. And again, it starts with you identifying this. Are you a person that gossips? Are you a person that creates mistrust? Are you a person that seeks to intimidate others? You have to look at this. And there's ways, great tools here in the audit where we can actually get candid feedback from your team. It may be very eye-opening for you to realize, oh wow, I didn't realize I was showing up this way, but somebody else feels that you are. And so it's a great mirror back. So we can look through this, through the audit process, through this giant leadership audit, where we sit in relationship. Um, we can look at alignment. So number 3 is we look at alignment. Look at, where are we wasting time? Where is there duplicate efforts, right? Division with teams. I mentioned that earlier in communication. These are all, they cross over with each other. But if we're not clear on the alignment, where we're going, what's our goals, what's our objectives. I work with clients where we do strategic planning each year, and then we have to come back, because the reality is you're going to drift, you're going to leak, there's going to be a focus on other things, and then you're like, I didn't even believe it, we didn't get where we wanted to be. And so we can go through and see, are we in alignment, are we achieving the goals of the organization? Are the individual goals and the performance reviews all aligning up, right? Or are we off here? And this can be huge, especially for a small organization where you have kind of maybe high level folks that are one person thinking we should go this way, another person's going this way. I worked with this in a previous organization where you had some very fantastic leaders, but they were very different in their goals and objectives. Where one was more focused in the connectedness of the team, where the other one was focused more on processes and procedures. Neither one was better than the other, but the reality was it was kind of like you're pulling apart rather than trying to come together and be complementary to those. And so you have to be paying attention and aware, are we in alignment? Fourth is execution. What does that look like as far as where are leaks, as far as unmet goals, missed deadlines, blown budgets, damaged credibility? This is a place where we need to look at how we can be more effective in our execution. How are we getting things done, going into production, making sure that we're credibly serving our team and our clients. Um, Again, where are we off here? I worked with another client where they had some great systems, use Asana. They had all these little processes, great, but they had difficulty meeting all these deadlines, and so their execution was consistently off because they had a tendency to keep taking on more and more and more, say yes, yes, yes. And so with the audit, we can look at that, saying, you know what? Yes, you're taking in more, and you're putting pressure on the system to where it literally, if you guys have ever tried to put fill a drink too much, right? And you fill it up and then you try to put the lid on and it spills out. And so that's a process of evaluating execution. Or it could be the other side where, you know what, um, we're trying to hit this goal and objective. We just can't keep getting there because there is leaks on the other end. So there could be leaks where we're overfilling, leaking out, or it could be, which means we have to build a bigger container, which is, I'm going to come to the last one, number 5. But execution is, how can we develop better using the tools and strategies as I bring as a coach and consultant to you to help make sure we improve your organizational targets. Can we meet them? And so, and then finally, number 5. So I've talked about communication, I've talked about relationships, I've talked about alignment, execution, and we want to talk about capacity. And again, think about these all in a wheel, if you will. So capacity is like, are we burning out? working lots of overtime hours? Are we missing opportunities, or is there stagnation? Are we feeling like we're not growing here? Are we feeling like, man, we just kind of hit a ceiling? And so this is huge too, because every organization wants to grow in some capacity. Maybe it's not leaps and bounds, but you want to grow in your individuals, you want to grow in your ability to perform, reach more clients, perhaps. And the way we can do this, and we can do it in a sustainable manner, that contributes to productivity. One of the things I've seen that has, especially for you in a small business owner, in somewhere between the 1 to 5 million, let's just say, annual revenue, is you're in this challenging space of capacity, hiring at just the right time, getting the people in just the right place. That's where I help you as a leader, a business owner, looking at hiring and getting people in the right place. Do you have the right resources? Because if you grow too fast, you have too much of a payroll costs and cash going out, and then you're like, well, that doesn't help, and so I'm not getting paid on time, right? So there's an issues there, and again, or you're growing, you're like, hey, that's great, but I don't have the people, and it collapses from the inside out, because you have so much out there, it comes in, and you don't have enough, for example, project managers with probably 6 to 10 years of experience. That's one thing we see right now, particularly in the AEC industry, architecture, engineering, consulting, environmental consulting, construction. There aren't a lot of project managers seasoned with, let's just say, 8, 10 years plus of experience right now. And so you're having a challenge with capacity, to make sure that we don't burn out the existing folks, and we can maximize our utilization with the folks that we do have. What does that look like? Part-time, full-time, hires and things of that nature. So as I cover all these things, and it's a lot, I'll give you that. Again, on this podcast, I want to make sure you're aware. Are you aware of where you're leaking in your organization? Because I can guarantee you, you're leaking in one or more areas. We all are. And it starts with your own personal assessment. And I have individual tools that I can use and share with you on that. And we can talk and have a conversation about what does that look like. But when you start to identify these leaky areas and areas where you're drifting, as we patch the hole, as we fix that, there'll be others. It's not an end all fix, because the reality is, as you grow and you expand, you're going to have new challenges. There are going to be new opportunities, if you will, to address the other leaks, the other areas where we're drifting. And that's the beauty and the nature of business and growth, is that we are all on this journey. I'm not here to throw shade, guilt, or shame on any one of these areas that you might be dealing with. Maybe more than one of its communication, possibly your relationships in the team, your alignment, the execution, or the capacity. Um, we want to deal with the facts of what are, so that we can get healthy and get you moving in the right direction. And so, as you listen to this podcast today, in this episode, if you're feeling so moved and you're realizing, you know what, I'm starting to recognize, and I can start to see some of these things in your own organization. But you're like, you know what, David, could you come alongside? And maybe you're just the department head. Maybe you are one of many leaders in the organization. You're like, can you come alongside and talk with me or the board or my team? Because it would really be beneficial for us. Let's have a conversation. Let's find a way to work with you, because I'm your advocate here in Steward Your Business. That's why I created this, to get you healthy and help you and your organization. And here we are in the middle of 2024, and it's only going to get more challenging, in my opinion, as we go forward in the ever-changing political environment. Our world is changing. We want to be healthy. We want to be doing the best that we can for ourselves and for our teams. And so I appreciate you guys coming on here and listening to the podcast. Please share this and like it. Obviously, if you're not already subscribed, please do. Your 5-star review means a lot to me. It helps me get the word out and share this with others. That's what I want to do every week, is bring you value, help you become victorious in leading yourself and your teams. If you're ready for a GiANT Leadership Audit, reach out to me. I'm happy to set that up with you. But whether it's individually or an organization, we can look at that and pave the way to you addressing the leaks that you have currently, and in anticipation for the ones that may come, or the cracks that may come, or the ways we may drift in the future. That's what we'll be talking in future podcast episodes, to continue to equip you and help you prepare and plan for those challenges that you will inevitably face, but you'll do it more confidently with power and certainty, knowing that you have the tools and the resources to call on to make sure that you can forge forward. I appreciate you guys listening here on behalf of myself, Steward Your Business, David Carr, the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. Please come back, listen again on our next episode. Until then, take care, be well, and we'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.